Well, sorry it took so long. It's Monday, late afternoon. It's almost 6 o'clock, and Raw starts in 2 hours. Of course, I will be shooting that video also tonight to be put up on the channel for tomorrow. And it looks like NXT is going to be coming out on Wednesday. Not sure what's going on for Thursday. Might be another hodgepodge video. Just kind of depends. So, let's talk Halloween Horror Nights. You know why? Because I've got some brand new developments. And I know what you're asking yourself. You're asking yourself, you watch these videos, you wonder why it's taking me this long to do this. Well, the reason why is because I really had to get my speculation right before I started saying anything. Because there's so many times, so many videos about Malcolm and Teen Spirit, and it's just kind of like I need to focus more this time. So we're going to talk about the two latest John Murdy code names for Halloween Horror Nights 24 in Hollywood. And they are Beauty is Only Skin Deep, as well as Atari 2600. So let's start off with what I've got here. Murdy tweeted this, basically saying that this is the first thing that was listed was, there's going to be a warning before we start, cue dramatic music. These hints are diabolically hard to decipher and may drive you insane. Yes, this has definitely done just that. If you wait patiently for the May's releases, you have nothing to fear. However, if you insist on trying to figure out what we're doing at this very moment right now, you will undoubtedly drive yourself mad trying to figure it out. There's 3 hints. One is a real hint, the other are red herrings. It's going to be murder to figure this one out. Hint 1, the code name Beauty is Only Skin Deep refers to things that are beautiful on the outside, but not on the inside. 2, the code name Beauty is Only Skin Deep refers to the business of beauty products. And the code name Beauty is Only Skin Deep refers to a horror property that stars a former model and or beauty queen. Now he lifted a bonus tent on April Fool's Day, which also said, ding dong, can you guess what it is? Well, I'm no rocket scientist, but I can tell you what ding dong usually means. Avon calling, I know it's old school, but that used to be what they said when an Avon representative would answer the door. Now granted, I've never dealt with this personally, but I do know of its existence. And it is prevalent in Edward Scissorhands, where Diane Wiest plays a character named Peg Boggs, and she comes to the door. I'll get to that in a minute. Now, beauty queens. Well, beauty queens that come to mind immediately, Linda Blair and Jodie Foster. Of course, Linda Blair, famous for playing Regan in The Exorcist, and Jodie Foster is Clarice Starling from Silence of the Lambs. Makes complete sense, and of course, Buffalo Bill, it puts the lotion on its skin, or else it gets the hose again. It could be Avon lotion that is being put on the skin, it's very possible. So, there's a couple things that throw out immediately. Number 1, I think that the actual clue of things that are beautiful on the outside may be a red herring. And I really think that the thing about business of beauty products is also a red herring. That being said, this is just bare bones saying this property involves a former model or beauty queen. And the ding dong throws in there. So what do we got? Well, let's talk about what we know so far. Now, I said with Jodie Foster we're leading towards Silence of the Lambs. I'd really like to see this house, but it doesn't necessarily fit Halloween Horror Nights, especially not in Hollywood. That being said, I don't think it's Silence of the Lambs, so the Jodie Foster connection, at least for this, is out. 2, apparently there are some murmurs lately about Hollywood getting Resident Evil this year, and there is actually an Avon product that looks a whole lot like something from Resident Evil So there's a possibility that Beauty is Only Skin Deep is Resident Evil. But I don't know this personally, I just know from what I've read, John Murdy doesn't seem like he really wants to do Resident Evil. I may be wrong on this, but from what I've been reading lately, it sounds like Murdy wouldn't be extremely interested in doing the property, and we would not get Resident Evil in Hollywood until after Murdy steps down as creative director. So, I'm going to throw that out as a no. I don't think we're getting Resident Evil. Do I think we're getting Resident Evil in Orlando this year? I think it's a possibility, but I'm not exactly sure at this point, especially if the speculation is true from what I've been hearing lately. And I've been hearing a lot of stuff lately. That's the reason it's going to take a while to get it all processed in my head. That's the reason it's taken so long for me to do this video. Well, Ding Dong also refers to something else, and it's interesting because I'm on Avon's website, and I don't know what language this is. It's in English, but I mean, I don't know what country this is. It's LT Lituva. I don't know what that is. But I will say that Avon is being promoted in this segment that says Cinema Loves Avon. It says Avon has been calling to American doors for more than 100 years, which made it one of the most popular brands. With its great impact on American lifestyle and U.S. economy, it easily became a subject of pop culture. Not only in the United States, just being honest. So, the first thing that's mentioned is Mad Men. Apparently, there is Don Draper's character's sister works for Mary Kay, and she really wants to work for Avon instead. And apparently, characters Peggy and Joan met the head of Avon Marketing to try to refresh their communication. Of course, this was when Avon changed literally when the time that Mad Men takes place in, and that basically featured the 50s style stay-at-home wife model of the early 60s, ads in 1968 and 69 demonstrated a different kind of glamour, crop-haired models and sparkly shift dresses. And apparently there's a movie coming out that's got Marky Mark in it called Avon Man, and that is a possibility that we should be talking about as well. It's a guy who gets laid off and he becomes an Avon representative, so that's interesting. And there's the connection to Gemma Arterton from the horrible Quantum of Solace Bond film, which just gets us to Daniel Craig. And maybe Daniel Craig might end up being a connection, potentially. I don't know. I doubt it. Bond itself is not a connection. I can tell you that right now. But I will say that it's really interesting that Daniel Craig gets brought up, because Daniel Craig was in a movie a while ago. Not really a horror movie per se, more of a thriller called Dream House. I don't think that's a connection, but you never know. You never know where something could connect. It's possible. And I should have connected through Gemma Arterton, but I didn't. Basically, it was a fragrance called Bond Girl 007. So that's the reason why it went that direction. So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And I will get to that in a minute as I progress, because obviously we know we want to talk about a couple of things as well. And she has no connection except for a really bad movie called Byzantium. But then again, Byzantium's a vampire film. So, maybe? Nah, don't think so, not this time. So, then of course there's the Edward Scissorhands connection we've talked about with Diane Wiest. The thing that nobody's talking about at all, and I'm not referring to Fran Drescher's The Nanny or anything like that. I'm referring to something that is kind of hanging above our heads, but we don't necessarily want to grab it, because it sounds more and more likely that this year Hollywood's getting The Walking Dead one last time, and we're getting American Horror Story in Orlando. I'm not positive on that, but it sounds more and more likely like that's going to be the case. Now, that being said, I don't see both Walking Dead and American Horror Story lasting together at the event. So I had to do my work and think that this is also a red herring, but it's also an interesting connection, because apparently when Jessica Lange is about to enter her enemy's houses. She's a witch, of course. In American Horror Story, she would say, Avon calling. So, is Beauty is Only Skin Deep American Horror Story? I doubt it, but it's something interesting to think about. It really is, honestly. So let's get to more speculation, shall we? I will throw out another few ideas. Like I said before, Linda Blair, teen model connected to The Exorcist. Is The Exorcist the freak-out property in Hollywood? I do 100% believe in my heart that The Exorcist is coming as a shared IP to both coasts this year. Do I think it's Beauty is Only Skin Deep? It's possible. It's very possible, actually. But another connection leads me down the road to more Edward Scissorhands. But it connects me to someone, Kevin Bacon style, who was in Edward Scissorhands. And that would be Winona Ryder, who was in Alien Resurrection. Is the freak-out maze alien? It's a very good possibility. And it'd be really interesting to see if we would actually go that direction or not. If Murdy would actually have his freak-out maze be alien. If it is alien, though, I'm still going to go on record and say that there are 2 of those freak-out properties right now. Major freak-out properties, being The Exorcist and Alien. You know, if I had to say it right now, I don't think they're just getting 1. I don't think they're getting 0. I think somehow, someway, everything will finally connect, and both Alien and The Exorcist will be coming to Halloween Horror Nights this year. We'll share them on both coasts. Because I don't think that Hollywood's getting Ghostbusters, and I've already said what I think that Hollywood's getting in place of Ghostbusters, but I'm not there yet, so we'll talk about that once we get to Atari 2600. So, basically what we have here, Beauty is Only Skin Deep. The big possibilities we have are either Alien or The Exorcist, and either one could be correct. A very outside possibility of Resident Evil and a switcheroo, an American Horror Story ends up being the property, but I don't necessarily call that a freak-out property. This would be a freak-out property. So, I'm going to go on record and say that basically we're looking at a possibility of both of them. Both of them could easily be the actual connection to Beauty is Only Skin Deep. Because the more and more I think about it, the more I think about the possibility that maybe The Exorcist really is Teen Spirit, and that may end up being the case. And again, there's also reasoning I can say that The Walking Dead is going to be Teen Spirit this year. So, who knows? It's a possibility either way. We'll talk about more speculation about it later. But then, like I said, as things often happen, Murdy decided he wanted to throw out our 4th code name for mazes at Halloween Horror Nights 24 in Hollywood, and that is Atari 2600. Now, apparently he laid out the rules that, first of all, he wanted to mention that he's only owned one video game system his entire life, and ended up being the Atari 2600. This property connects to one of the cartridges on the Atari 2600. I say cartridges because that's actually a great terminology to use. And it doesn't necessarily mean that is exactly what it is, but it's a connection to a connection, and Kevin Bacon's us to our property this year. The second one was a signature sound effect that may or may not be in the Atari version. It was obviously a game that was on multiple consoles. During the end of the 2600, that's when we started getting the Nintendo, and of course there were also arcade consoles as well during that time as well. So there's a lot of things that came to mind. But let's talk about a couple of the Atari 2600 games that jump out immediately. So we've got stuff like Ghost Manor. And when I think Ghost Manor, I don't necessarily think it together, I think it combined, and maybe Ghost Manor is Resident Evil, potentially. I know there's a Manor of Resident Evil, but I highly doubt that's the case. That's just one of those speculation things. You're like, oh, and just go on. I was like, okay, I'm going to move on. Moving on. Then I'm going to throw out an idea for the game Jungle Hunt, which could connect to what was already rumored for Orlando this year in speculatory video that I did before this one, that you can also check out on the Halloween Horror Nights playlist here on Pop, that led us to Predator. And I said that Predator could end up leading us to Alien down the road. Maybe a little sooner than we all thought it could. So, of course, there's games featuring Frankenstein's monster and Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters 2, Alien, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a game literally just called Haunted House. Well, this is rather interesting. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the worst Atari game of all time, E.T. That's for you, James Ralph, the angry video game nerd, who you could see at Orlando's event in the first room at The Walking Dead. At least that's who I thought it was, because that's what I said it was. Now, anybody that went through that house would know exactly what I'm talking about. Since I may not be talking to people that are on the coast I'm currently on, there was a blacksmith in the first room of No Safe Haven in Orlando last year that actually looked identical to the angry video game nerd James Ralph. So that's the reason I wanted to throw that reference out. So it's a multi-leveled reference, and I thought it was something I needed to say. So, there was a couple of things, and the first thing is something that was mentioned in a Horror Nights Updaters video, and shout out to them, obviously, they're awesome people, and they basically had a video recently, and there was a speculation that was done in text only. Apparently, John Murdy was asked about Haunted House being the property, and he said, well, he owned the game, and he did remember playing it. He also knew that there was a sound effect whenever something would happen, a certain something would happen, the Twilight Zone theme would start playing. So, it made me think, and I was thinking, maybe we'll connect this to Twilight Zone. So, I did some homework. And you connect a lot of things to Twilight Zone. Like, of course, E.T. The real Ghostbusters. The cartoon series. Apparently Ray mentioned the Twilight Zone at one point. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Family Portrait. Silent Night, Deadly Night. The Dead Zone, of course, it's been mentioned a lot during the speculation. The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. The Hills Have Eyes. And Werewolf, the Devil's Hound. Well, let's talk about this, shall we? Well, Dr. Emmett Brown 1 decided he'd throw out the idea, and it makes total sense, that maybe this sound effect could be possibly a flamethrower from maybe Alien. Or maybe it could possibly be one of the proton packs from Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters was one of the first games I played on Atari, actually, to be totally honest. But, not sure. Now, Don W., who I've mentioned on this video before, actually had a really interesting speculation, and he connected the sound of Pac-Man. Pac-Man has that waka 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 sound. Now, basically, when he eats the pellets, he makes that sound. What also goes waka 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 waka? Yes, I slowed it down for a reason. Fozzie Bear says waka waka. And Fozzie Bear was puppeteered by the great Frank Oz, who has a lot of credits in his entire filmography, but one raises higher above, and that is, yes, he was a puppeteer on American Werewolf in London. Interesting, huh? Thank you, Don W., for coming up with that exact speculation. So, let's talk about this. Atari 2600 is an American Werewolf in London. Why? Number one, Orlando, we did so well with it last year. Murdy wanted it and ended up getting scrapped last year in Hollywood. Now, that being said, maybe this is the year to do it. And I said a long time ago in my original speculation videos in January, Hollywood was going to be getting American Werewolf in London this year. And this is a great way to connect the property. Also connecting the Twilight Zone as well with Werewolf, the Devil's Hound. It's another werewolf reference, so that's interesting that that gets thrown out there. So yes, it's a very good possibility we could actually be seeing an American Werewolf in London in Hollywood, and I think that's a very good possibility. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that there is a really good chance that Atari 2600 is an American Werewolf in London. Two other choices. Now this seems to be a choice that a lot of people are jumping on, so I'm going to go with that. And then I'm going to finish with my friend John's choice, so we're going to go with that. So these are three possibilities. The second one is really simple. It's Alien. Why? First off, Xenophobe is a game on the system of 2600. It's one of the last games before the 2600 console stopped producing games. And of course it has an NES port as well, and it was also in the arcades. Now it's interesting that this is mentioned because apparently Xenophobe has a very, not iconic, but a very interesting theme song, and it's the only sound you really get in the game. Well, the game music, that's pretty much what it is. It's during the title screen. And Xenophobe was inspired by Alien, which is also a game on the Atari 2600 console. It's a freak-out maze. It's a maze people have wanted for a long time, and it would work really well. That would go with the puppeteer idea as well, with how American Werewolf in London used puppeteers. I think that puppets would be used for the actual aliens themselves in an alien house. Do I think Alien is the property? I think it's a really, really good possibility. So that's a possibility as well. So I'll throw it out to my good friend Psycho Massacre Films for coming up with this final one. The final one, of course, is centered around Halloween. Now, obviously, we both want Halloween. The horror community that surrounds Halloween Horror Nights in both coasts want Halloween. This is not Halloween. Halloween is a Kevin Bacon connection. Halloween, of course, you hear the iconic theme, and when Michael Myers would show up, you would hear the sound effect that you know was coming, kind of like Jason in the Friday the 13th game on NES. Now, there's an interesting connection to that, and that would not connect to Halloween. No, it's actually going to connect us to another freak-out property that Murdy has been talking about for a long time, that during the Magic 8-Ball game on Twitter, he said basically would happen down the road, whether it's this year or next, and that would be the anthology series Trick or Treat, which is also a property that is supposed to come to Orlando in the near future, if you believe speculation, and we don't know if we can or not right now. So, yeah, you basically have connected Beauty is Only Skin Deep to Alien or The Exorcist. You've connected Atari 2600 to an American Werewolf in London, Alien or Trick or Treat. So, yeah, that's the speculation right now. And we don't know exactly what's shoot, what's work. We don't know until we're going to get some more information from John Murdy. I will say right now that I'm thinking the more I do this, I'm starting to believe that we're going to split this year, and Hollywood, you will get The Walking Dead for one last time. And I think that because Twitter basically said they're going in a different direction this year, this may be American Horror Story's debut at Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando. So I think that we split our television properties. So Hollywood, you're going to get Walking Dead, and Orlando is getting American Horror Story. And you know what? Let's flip-flop that for next year, to be totally honest. So we can get one last long day. One last Walking Dead house in a soundstage, and you guys in Hollywood can get American Horror Story. And I think that The Purge is going to be coming to both. Don't know if it's going to be a house or a scare zone. I think it's a good possibility for either one at this point. I think that we are both going to get The Exorcist, and I think that it's a really good possibility if it does come to fruition, we're both getting Alien. And I really will think right now that we're the ones that are going to get Ghostbusters in Orlando. I think Ghostbusters does come to Orlando. I don't think Ghostbusters comes to Hollywood. I actually think that Hollywood may end up getting something else instead, but I haven't quite decided what it is yet, because there's a lot of things Hollywood could be getting at this point. And it sounds to me like maybe we get Ghostbusters and Hollywood gets Resident Evil. That's a possibility as well. Who knows? So yeah, there's a lot of speculation on the table right now, but not necessarily enough to really talk more in depth about it. But don't worry. Once I get some more information, I'll gladly shoot you guys out a video, and we'll talk all about it. So if we get any more information this week, there'll be more Horror Nights videos this week. If we get it next week, week after, who knows? Whenever we get another maze code name, I'll shoot that information out. We'll talk about that as well. So, thank you everyone for watching. I know there's a lot of you out there watching my Halloween Horror Nights videos, and I do appreciate it. Shout out to all the awesome Halloween Horror Nights updaters all over the internet. You guys are all awesome. And I continue to watch your videos like I know hopefully you guys and girls out there continue to watch mine. Still waiting for Dr. Jimmy's cryptic comments to come out. Really excited about that. And then we can start legitimate speculation for Orlando. So, that being said, I want to thank you guys and girls out there for watching. And until tomorrow, boys and girls, that's all I got to say about that.